All right. Welcome to the Get Bit Podcast, the podcast for blurs, nerds, everything in between. Surprisingly, I am not Will. I am Joe. Will's actually out for probably the next 2 weeks because he, as of today, just had his second kiddo, beautiful baby girl. Congratulations to him. And now he's got to figure out for the next week or two, has his house always been this sharp?
Yeah, congrats to Papa Will.
Yes. And the man to my right, or possibly below me, I don't know how this is being shown on uh what are we on Twitch on Twitch is Tafari with Tafari TV.
Happy Friday, folks.
Yes,
We
happy Friday.
we're still in August. September hasn't creeped up on us yet just yet. Give it
No,
like
we
a day.
we will we will play the Earth, Wind, and Fire song when it gets there. We
Oh my
promise.
God, yeah, we are getting. They almost missed it last year. They got like on Twitter at like 11 o'clock at night. It was like, yeah, we almost forgot what today was, and then they just posted the whole thing.
The only month where we can start with Earth, Wind, and Fire and end with Green Day.
Yep.
I feel better about the beginning of beginning of September than I do the end of it. So, we actually are only live partially tonight. Tafari and I, got to interview Steve Orlando. We did a pre-recording in the event that something like this may happen because Will kind of gave us the heads up of a nebulous date around this time frame of the first 2 weeks of August. So the first day of August, we got to interview famed Marvel and DC writer Steve Orlando. We will run that whole interview uninterrupted because I don't monetize this channel and ads can't get me. But I don't want to have to deal with messy taxes.
Yeah, that's fair.
Far any words before we start it up?
No, sit back, join the chat. We'll be here commenting as well. But it was a lot of fun. So this was a really cool sit down we got to do on top of the others I've had this past month. So this was a nice change up for me.
So that means we're doing that. So very gracious to come on the show. For those unaware, he is the current writer of Scarlet Witch, Annihilation, and many, many other books. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, sir.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. I'm excited to talk.
So, first off, I guess the first question we got to ask is, how did you get to comics?
It's kind of always been the plan. I got my first comic when I was probably about 2 years old, back in the 80s. And mostly because my father sold sports memorabilia, and I was not so into sports memorabilia. So when we would be out buying new collections and things, here I was looking at both the non-sports cards and of course, back issue bins of comics. So that's when I read West Coast Avengers 16. It's probably why I like obscure characters. West Coast Avengers was my first comic. And I was immediately like really, really sort of taken with the colorful worlds, the madness of it all. And yeah, I didn't decide I wanted to write comics, but it actually did happen 10 years later. I went to my first comic convention and started trying to break into this business when I was about 12 years old. Convinced I was going to be the next Jim Shooter or the next Paul Levitz. For folks who don't know, both of whom broke into comics in their teens. And that didn't work out, but I kept at it. I knew I wanted this to be what I wanted to do. I wasn't immediately sure that it was going to be writing. I've actually done every job involved with making a comic throughout my career. I wrote, illustrated, lettered. I didn't color because it was black and white, but did pre-press and everything else on a graphic novel for one of my theses in college. So I've done it all, and I have colored before as well. And slowly, especially after I did that book, it became apparent to me that writing was the thing for me. About 20 pages into 100 pages, mentally I was ready to move on to the next story, but there were still 80 pages to go. So, I brought new pitches to Comic-Cons once, twice, 3 times a year, where I'd meet the people that were mentoring me, the folks at Man of Action, Steve Siegel and Joe Kelly, Will Dennis, then from Vertigo, now from Distillery. Over the course of 18 to 20 years, the work finally got to a place where it was professional, it was publisher level, And as promised to me all those years ago, Siegel told me when I was ready, he would get my stuff in front of the right person, and he did. He delivered in 2012. I sold what would become my first like sort of long form book at Image, Undertow. 2 years later, it was on the stands, and that was the year we sold Midnighter. So it was, in the words of many, it was about a 20-year overnight success.
That's fantastic. I know of Jim Shooter because I have such an extensive comic book history, but I listen to so many comic book podcasts that his name can't not be uttered.
Sure.
So that what else was there? So you worked at Image, you've been to DC, you had a fantastic run with Martian Manhunter, which is a very hard character to tackle. Most people only either know him in my age range from Justice League, the JLI series. Most people now know him more from the Unlimited TV series. What was it like writing Martian Manhunter?
I mean, that's a book. He's my favorite character at DC, and I appreciate you saying that as well, because I'll be honest, it's one of my favorite, if not the favorite book I've ever been part of. So, and I'm trying to get it back in print. This is an ongoing hustle.
Ooh.
We're trying. But so honestly, from the time I was at DC, I was already sort of politicking to get that book approved. It was well known that that was my favorite character, to the extent that, you know, when they called to offer me DC versus Looney Tunes, Dan sort of said he was going to say the first thing, and I would say yes, and then I would get angry at him when he said the second thing. And the first thing he said was Martian Manhunter, and I was like, fuck it, we're in. Let's do it. And then, of course, he said Marvin the Martian, and I was like, you son of a bitch. But I'm still in. I'm still in. And then once we sort of did some proof of concept that I could write the character there, we leapt into sort of leaning and positioning myself and Riley and the whole creative team coming off Batman the Shadow with Martian Manhunter as our next thing we wanted to do. So, I mean, I did a lot of work at DC. I'm doing a lot of work at Marvel. I've actually, knock on wood, I've worked at almost every comic publisher, almost every. But among all that stuff, Martian Manhunter is he is my favorite DC character. It's my proudest book I did at DC. So, for me, it was like, if I'm in the room, like, this is the book I'm going to push for. Now, the one behind that was Dr. Fate, which I didn't get, but you know what? I'm still around. It's 10 years in the business for me this year. So maybe my time will come. And I'm writing a somewhat auspicious magic book as we speak. So it did all
I mean, doctors are in at the moment. We just got the Doctor Doom announcement. Doctor Strange is out and about thanks to Jed McKay. I don't think I've ever seen him more prominent in comics as he has been as of lately. But the other thing I was going to ask you, because the final issue actually comes out today, was your involvement in Power Rangers.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Sorry. Because the final issue, the whole series wraps up today. Your involvement in Power Rangers, because Power Rangers ends at Boom Studios today.
Oh my God! I thought you said Power Rangers. I thought I misheard you. Well, I'll be honest. I appreciate you asking me, but I only did the first 13 backup stories, so it has been. I am a mere and happy reader when it comes to Power Rangers now. So no, so you're right. I was part of the launch of that, and we with Kyle Higgins. Kyle did the main story with Henry Precetta. I did the Bulk and Skull backup stories with Corin Howell. And honestly, the only reason that stopped is because I signed an exclusive with DC, which meant I couldn't work on licensed stuff elsewhere. But it was a blast. It was one of the easiest pitches I've ever had. I was at the Boom's, what is that thing the Boom booth at San Diego, and I said, hey, what you guys really need is a Bulk and Skull thing that you present like Archie Comics, and they were like, sold. It was the easiest sell I've ever had. So we did it. We would have kept doing it, but unfortunately, I had to jump over to DC exclusive for 4 years. Not that unfortunate for me, but for Bulk and Skull. But yeah, so I'm very happy with that work, and it sprung right from my mind and Corinne. But I have not been on the book for quite some time, so I am checking in, excited to see where it wraps. But that's my role in that.
I had to bring it up because I'm a huge Bulk and Skull fan. Those two are the most consistent, endearing, and evolving characters throughout the Power Ranger landscape. So I just thought I'd bring it up since you got to handle them.
Oh, sure. And I'm to this day I'm sad I couldn't get in a joke where Bulk called the Putty Patrol the Putty Comptrollers instead of the Putty Patrollers, but I got this note, and they were from the license holders, and they were like, "Well, nobody knows what a comptroller is," and I said, "Yes, I appreciate you explaining the joke," but it didn't get through. So, one of a list of many jokes. When you're dealing with folks who are coming from outside the base language, it's something that's getting published, and let me tell you, humor is 1,000 times more challenging than anything else, just because so much of it relies on subtlety and stuff. So it's funny. The last thing I'll say about Power Rangers is I got more notes on those 2-page stories than Kyle got on the entire full-length stories that preceded them.
Oh, good Lord. Tafari, do you have a question?
Yeah, so you were just at Comic-Con recently?
I was at Raleigh GalaxyCon, which was taking place at the same time as Comic-Con, and I love Raleigh, so it was an easy decision for me. So I was down in North Carolina.
Okay, because I just came from DreamCon in Austin, and then right before that, BlurredCon in the DMV area. I don't know about you, but conventions for me is always like a nice regathering of like-minded people. It's always kind of nice to be around people who do the same thing you do or are chasing the same goals. Is there anyone who ever gave you any like gems or like just nuggets of encouragement, either recently or early on, that kind of helped along your path?
Well, I mean, yeah, from the time I was 12, I was getting like constant notes and critique from Steve Siegel and Joe Kelly, and soon after Will Dennis and a little bit, and then years later Mark Doyle. But no, I mean, the guys that taught me how to write comics, either the people that are responsible for me, for better or worse, are the Man of Action guys. For folks who don't know, they also created Ben 10. If you watch that on TV, Kelly and Siegel most of all, but also Duncan Relu, also Joe Casey. And I mean, listen, they told me what I needed to hear, not what I wanted to hear, for almost 2 decades. And for me, that worked. Everybody needs a different kind of encouragement. I am a sort of blunt, brusque person. I was described as acerbic over the weekend. So, like me, a kid, Siegel said, "Listen, I'm going to tell you what needs to get better about your work. If you want to know what's already good, that's what your mom's for." But it's true. A lot of folks come up with their a pitch they put all this love and passion into, which you have to, by the way, but that doesn't automatically mean that it's good, unfortunately. And sometimes folks just want to be told they're ready when they're not, and that doesn't really help anyone. So for better or worse, I've had a very, again, we'll call it brusque upbringing in the business. But yeah, for me, you're talking about encouragement. That's what I needed to hear. It doesn't work for everybody. Everybody's different, but I would call them probably every 6 months and say, "Oh, it's never going to happen. It still hasn't happened. I've been doing this for years." And Siegel would just say, "Well, if it's hard, you could just quit." And for me, that would be enough to piss me off and keep back at it for an additional 6 months.
Yeah, Joe, got anything off of that one?
Well, I know Joe Kelly's doing the new Spider-Man thing, so we can transition to Marvel for a little bit. I've again followed you actually pretty not closely, but loosely, because you're everywhere. And then you started doing one of my favorite women of Marvel, which is Scarlet Witch. And I have a question. What's it like relaunching the book multiple times? Because we've gone through Scarlet Witch, then we went Scarlet Witch Quicksilver with a new #1, and then I think we got a new #1. Is it like chapters, or is it just Marvel continuously telling you we need a new #1 to keep this book going, or what's it like relaunching the title continuously?
I mean, it is, we, at the end of the day, we want to tell the story for as long as we can. And, I wouldn't, I'll go out on a limb and say the creators are not any more specifically fans of frequent relaunches than readers may be. But that being said, I say this all the time, like the minute that retailers, the people that and readers are buying an issue 6 at the same number they even buy an issue 2, you won't, but never mind an issue 11, then you won't see a relaunches. Like it is unfortunately a product of the way people react to early numbers in a series versus later numbers. Never mind, books like Action Comics that are well into the thousands, and Detective as well. So, I mean, it's a creative hurdle for sure, but it's one we're used to just because we want to be able to tell these stories as long as they can. Without a relaunch, the cumulative number of issues of Scarlet Witch would have been a third of what we've already gotten. And that's not ideal. I'm not like sitting excited about that, but it is right now what we're working with, right? Like we want to keep these things going. When a publisher believes in a book, I mean, they still have to make money, unfortunately. So, and it just, between people, the demographic has fractured, and that's fine. People should read comics the way that they want to, whether that is as long as they're paying for them and not stealing them. Whether that is in digital or whether it's in print as a weekly, or rather a periodical book or a trade paperback. That being said, periodical sales are still, for the moment, the metric the publishers use. So as long as that stands, and as long as people are going to order deeper on 2 issues 1 through 5 versus on issues 1 to 10, that's kind of where we're at. But look, it's a creative challenge. But look, but we exist in an industry of challenges, and so it that's just one of many, and it becomes something that hopefully you can turn it into something good. With Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, I'll be honest, if we hadn't done the new #1, we probably would not have had the focus on Pietro that we did, because it is both their 60th anniversaries. But being able to retitle for that time and kick off again gave us that opportunity. So. Much like anything else, like we got to find the exciting parts in what we have to do and tell the best story possible. That's kind of where we're at least.
Tafari?
So, what was it like when you guys got the GLAAD Award nomination?
Almost as good as if we won it. It was. I mean, look, I was very excited. I was early in my career. It was pleasing to see folks sort of put some recognition on that we had done something different and sort of groundbreaking with Midnighter. Now comes the part of the podcast where I cast some shade and say that I've published groundbreaking career work every year since then. But I'm not. Can I be shady on this podcast? I'm not a straight guy writing about it. So
you are a guest in this household, sir. You have free reign. Go.
That's all I'll say. That's all I'll say. So, but it was, it is always an honor to get spotlighted, and all we can do, whether we get nominations or not for those things, is keep telling the best possible stories we can. For me, I don't want to tell, first of all, whether any kind of story, needless to say, a queer story, I don't want to tell one that I've already told before. So now 10 years in, I'm trying to talk about something new every time. And sometimes that clicks with sort of what folks expect in the mainstream, and sometimes it doesn't. But it was great to get that nod for Midnighter, and the work that gets out there is all very important. I've been doing those types of stories since, along with all my other work. And I'm trying to dance around these things because many of my peers who have gotten those awards are extremely well deserving. But a friend once told me that when you're ahead of the curve, it can be a problem because people like the curve. And I'll just leave that there in my discussions of those awards.
All right, so we'll circle back a little bit to Marvel, because I asked you this at the convention, and I don't know how comic book editorial works. I wish I did. I love learning about how industry works. Are you handed a character, or do you fight for your characters? Because right now you seem to be the go-to guy for Scarlet Witch and anything in the year 2099. Which I just got done reading the most current Annihilation, which was fantastic.
Well, thank you. The real answer is, and it's probably going to be frustrating, and if it's frustrating for you, guess what? All of us too, is that there's no one answer. Much like any other gig, you ask, are you handed characters, or do you have to pitch or fight for them? Honestly, it depends on who you are, and also your relationship with a given publisher. Look at when I was at DC. There, I was on exclusive contract, and I fought for a Martian Manhunter book for years before it got approved. At the same time, like other publishers, I've done things like at Mad Cave, my book Exorcists Never Die, which I had a blast doing. That they came to me with a little kernel of an idea. They'd read my work and asked if I would develop it into something more. But the core idea, the original seed for the idea, did come from them. That's why it's work for hire. At Marvel, it's kind of all the above, and at DC, I mean, the bigger publishers, the more variations on how they can go. Sometimes they call me, sometimes I check in. We're all very protective of our books, so we want to write them for as long as possible. But as far as things like Scarlet Witch, it's interesting. Like, I probably got that offer because I had done Darkhold. But who knows what type of alchemy happened before they offered me Darkhold all those years ago? Like I wasn't privy to that. It's actually not my first Marvel work. It's well, I said that incorrectly. This is why I'm confused. It actually is my first Marvel work, but it's not the first Marvel work that came out, which is the other thing that sometimes happens. My Curse of the Man thing is the first thing I ever had that came out and hit the stands, but Darkhold actually is my first bit of Marvel work. So, and then with something like 2099, well, to be honest, like much like Martian Manhunter, I think it was pretty well known that I'm a big 2099 fan. I followed Spider-Man 2099 religiously. I followed X-Men 2099 religiously. And, that probably is why they offered me the first thing, Exodus, because it was for the 30th anniversary. And then, of course, like with Scarlet Witch, you build this momentum, right? Like you are the guy you want to keep, or rather the person, you want to keep being the person. That sort of builds and builds and builds until it, eventually I'm sure the bubble will burst and someone else will write Spider-Man 2099 and someone else will write Scarlet Witch. But hopefully at that point, I've created such a narrative around what kind of work I do and of course, my back of office professionalism that hypothetically exists, that there was something else, and that's how, and that changes office by office and publisher by publisher. So that's why I'm sure it can be kind of a frustrating answer. But, yes, there's one big publisher, Marvel. Yes, there's one big publisher, DC. But really, each group kind of has its own style because it's a whole different, it's a whole different group of people, and they all do things their own way.
Good, Tafari.
So, being that you worked on a myriad of projects and now you have the Scarlet Witch stuff coming out with her and Pietro, are there any projects you worked on that have been either hinted at or adapted into animation or live action? Or if not, is there one that you would hope that they would incorporate later on into some kind of future movie or Blu-ray projects down the road?
Well, I mean, I have a couple of my originals are out, for varying degrees of options right now. My book Party and Pray that I co-wrote with Steve Fox has been optioned by Legendary. My book Virgil has been on and off, which I published at Image years ago with JD Faith, has been on and off on option basically since it came out. And the mercenary answers, I would love one of my originals to get picked up because that's what's gonna pay off my house, and we are only human. But to answer your question, I have not. So when you work at DC and Marvel, you get what's called you kind of get a stake in new characters that you create for them, but you don't. I'm sure everybody saw Jim Starlin and Thanos during during that era of the Marvel movies, so they're familiar. When you do something new that doesn't feature an all new character, you sometimes still get a little nod from the company, but it's not necessarily obligatory because you might have innovated like a scene or something like that, like Bane breaking Batman's back, right? Like, or something, So I actually have, without talking about how the sausage is made too much, I actually have gotten a payment from DC over something I did, and it was in fact when Flex Mentello accidentally gives the entire team orgasms in Doom Patrol, because this is the first time that ever happened was in Milk Wars, which I wrote with Gerard Way. So it's the only time it's happened, but it's also one of my favorite emails I've ever been able to answer.
Okay, did you see how like viral that scene went when it launched in Doom? Like a lot of people didn't know what Doom Patrol was, and then that was just all over Twitter, and then everyone was like, "Okay, I need to watch whatever this show is just to understand what's happening here."
Imagine that. No, I don't know that I for reasons that might be obvious to everyone. Social media can be a bit of a hurricane, so I might have missed that because I try to be I try to sort of step back, but I'm glad. I mean, like, without getting into it too much, I can't believe how much I enjoyed the Doom Patrol show. I mean, it was funny to me because during this period of time, we couldn't really figure out how to do a Superman movie, but we could do like Danny the Street and Flex Mentallo, which is, we could do the Doom Patrol getting sucked into a donkey's ass, which does happen. But I was really happy with that show. It's one of the first shows I watched with my fiance when we got together. At that time, he was not. And it's funny because he said, I can't watch Marvel movies. I haven't seen any, and there's too much of a barrier to entry. It's all too weird. And I'm like, okay, but you can watch Doom Patrol, which has a dude, again, opens with the team getting sucked into a donkey's rectum. And that's fine, but Marvel movies too weird. It's fascinating to me, but no, it's a great show, and they should be really proud of what they did. And a confession is that I've been saving the last 6 episodes. I don't want it to end, so I actually haven't watched the last 6 yet.
That's amazing.
That specific, the weird orgasm scene and the robot not knowing what's going. That was just like, I heard about the show. That was just that scene was everywhere, and that I think so that someone is responsible for the viewership that show got. Just letting you know.
I mean, and I gotta say, from a creative point as well, I wasn't the TV and movie folks. That's a different place than the comic folks. But I have to commend the creators of that show because I actually think putting Cyborg on that team was kind of genius. He does kind of, not that he doesn't fit in the Justice League or the Titans. He absolutely does. He's a dynamic character. But when you think about the mandate of the Doom Patrol being these people that have survived like grievous trauma and injury and coming out somehow superhuman, like that's him. I mean, he got turned into, he got splattered by, I forget what actually wounds him in the comics. Like the trading card I used to have made it look like some sort of molten plastic. But one way or another, I know, he kind of does fit the bill with everything he went through. Never mind the jealousy you get between him and Cliff because his body is much cooler. I feel like Cliff and Cyborg are like back in World War II, you had like a sophisticated American tanks, and you had then Russian tanks that were like essentially operating on someone pedaling like the Flintstones, but they were very sturdy, and that's Cliff. He's analog and nearly indestructible. But then Vic is like the latest iPhone.
We talk about Cyborg quite a bit on the series because we tried reading his most current book and we just couldn't do it because it was so weird because he's on so many teams that he's a team player. And then when they try to get him like on a solo book, it was like, well, who's his arch nemesis? Like, is it Brother Blood? Is it? No, that's the cartoon. And then of course the art was a little weird. So like that kind of killed it for us too. Not to mention, I like the Cyborg from Doom Patrol much more than I did the Cyborg from the Justice League movie, but I'm a little biased.
I think it was more relatable, obviously the effects budget is not on the show what it is in the movie, but they did a lot of work to make you feel for Vic in a much more tangible way. But then again, to the movie people's, without hitting them too hard, a movie these days, well, I shouldn't say, maybe it's 4 hours long, but even if it is, and it should be 2 hours long, but even if it's 4, the average TV season is like 13 hours. So they do have more time. Yeah. I think they made great use of it.
Okay, I got it. There were some questions I did have from reading Annihilation 2099. Was it always
fresh?
Yes. Was it always intended? Annihilation always intended to be like a kind of anthology, following the different heroes rather than one big thing with the backup story being Dracula going to the planet?
Yes, they've been that's something that they've been sort of pushing and asking for. Like you notice that the horror focused run we did in January was similar. Mm-hmm. It was his introduction. So they've been really interested in introducing these 2099 versions of introducing new characters, but opening up new pockets of 2099, whether it was the horror stuff in January, whether it was the cosmic stuff this month. And then, of course, yes, we're going to try to bring it all together. So though the last two were essentially they were series of one shots. Conquest is not that. It is as much of a blockbuster as we can fit into 5 issues, and brings together folks from Annihilation, folks from the horror run, and even and folks from even before that, from Exodus and Dark Genesis and things like that. So, but I think they want to do the work to not short trip the introductions for these characters, and I've been thankful for it. I got to create from whole cloth these new versions of characters and actually spend time giving them real origins. So however we got there, it was really, really exciting. I think I love all the Annihilation issues. Probably Surfer and Red Hulk are my favorites.
That's I was just about to say, because when I read Silver Surfer, I was like, this is one of the most classic Silver Surfer tales I've read in the past 20 years. This is like the most deep of all the Silver Surfer books that have been out in a while. This is a one-shot.
And it's not even the original guy, but we did get the Ron Mars seal of approval, so that's all right.
The other question I had was was Wolverine as Nova? Because I remember the last time we visited 2099 with Nova, or someone who had a Nova helmet, we can say it was Conan. No, I don't think anyone's going to come after us. Was it always intended to be Wolverine, or if he was still available to Marvel, would the last Nova had continued to be Conan because he had the helmet?
I'm going to be honest with you, that's a great question to which I don't really know the answer. There was the suggestion that it would be a great place to build off the existing Wolverine stuff in 2099 because he had been injured in Time Storm. But the Conan stuff, I actually bust David Pepos' balls about this all the time because I had just unified all of the 2099 timelines into one, and then he was like, "Ha ha! Just kidding. We're going to do another one." Which happens, by the way. Like that's why I'll just rib on him, but it's okay. But so I probably would have worked that one in, or I mean, because it was in the past of 2099, it probably would have been unified. But the Conan's loss came in between. So I actually don't know. I mean, but I will tell you, it would have been a different book because it would have been more He-Man than Western in space with Conan. But to be clear, I fucking love Conan, so that would have been amazing. Yeah, so I'm always gonna give you guys the most honest answer possible, at least within the bounds of my contracts. And I do not know that if that discussion was had, it happened outside of my purview or above my head or whatever you want to say. But that being said, it would have been awesome. I
would have loved to see Conan take on Dracula.
But I'm glad you said that because you kind of will get it in a way like Conan. And this is not, Conan is not in the book. But when you meet the villains of Annihilation, when you meet the villains of Conquest in a couple months, they're Spider-Woman's people. And all we know is that she left her planet because she hated, it was too horrible to live there. And she was inspired by Spider-Man to come here, to come to Earth and become Spider-Woman. But when you meet her people, they are very much like space spider Vikings. So in a way, you will get Dracula versus Conan, but he's even meaner and he's Spider-Side 2099.
That's fantastic.
But he is a big, beefy spider person in space, so we're kind of getting it.
Now I just need Spider-Side to kill Rep Rap and my world will be great.
How dare you? I love that character. I'm getting off this podcast.
See what you did, Joe.
It was a matter of time before I screwed it up.
You fucked yourself, Joe, because I don't even want to write Amazing Spider-Man. I just want to write Wreck Rap.
But why? He's actually not that bad when he on sometimes, but like that initial introduction was woof.
Well,
that was a lot.
I was like, he falls into actually the same category as Spider-Woman, which is where I love non-human admirers of human superheroes. And listen, I have a lot of strange silos in my life, but like, he because he's a Spider-Man fan from hell, I think, right, or something. So yeah. And similarly, like the Spider-Woman being, finding out about Spider-Man from like a subspace monitoring station and abandoning her people to become better and change who she was very heavily, inspired, even though the story is different, from the Kingdom Come Batwoman. If you want to make like a long reach back, because she was all. I was fascinated. The only thing you ever got in the collected edition was that she was a Batman admirer from the Fourth World. And I just thought, like, what is someone who like grew up in the Batman legend, but is a fucking new god? What is that like? So I've always been fascinated by that character. We couldn't do that, but that is how we got Spider-Woman in her own way, Spider-Man 2099. And it's also, you know, probably why I like Rec Rap. And, you know, so should you, is what I would say. But I mean, it is okay. We all have characters. I mean, I'll fully confess that I actually find, like, I'll make a big statement to overcome the Rec Rap hate. I actually find Deadpool kind of tiresome in comics. So let the knives come out. Not that they could hurt him or me. But actually, it's just because of the overexposure. Like, I understand that. I think that he actually works really well in the films, and I love those movies. But it's because there's only 3 of them, to be frank. And also, like, a lot of the other stuff is so self-serious. But I will recant that in 3 years if post this movie he's like in every single fucking Marvel movie, and then I will want to walk into the ocean, which is inconvenient because I live very close to it.
What do you got, Tafari?
All right, so it sounds like you have like a good work ethic and team each time you on a project, and you have a lot of stories. What was your like favorite project to work on, where everything from the work you put into the people you worked with was just a joy to be a part of?
I mean, it's hard not to say Martian Manhunter, but that's just because it was my favorite character with my favorite artist to work with in at the time, and still today, even though we haven't done it in a while, in Riley Rossmo. And with my, like, from top to bottom, like Darren is amazing, Yvonne is amazing, and the editorial team, Dave Wheelgoes and Chris Conroy, my favorite people to work with at DC, though Dave has since spread his wings and become a writer. But so it's hard not to say that, you know. But if I had to reach beyond it, I don't know. I mean, I had a blast I did this short story called More Than Maybe with Greg Smallwood in Crimes of Passion, which was like an homage. It wasn't like an homage. Why am I such a millennial? It was an homage to the Batman serials of the 1940s. And Greg just did an amazing job. We did accidentally, we think about a lot of things, but the thing that people latch onto is always the thing you don't think about. So Greg had Batman writing a letter with his left hand, and when the issue came out, we got all this praise from the left-handed community. And I'm glad, but they were like, oh, can you confirm that Batman is left-handed? And I, to be honest, Greg drew him with whatever hand he wanted to draw him writing with, and he's also Batman, so I would wager that he's ambidextrous, much like he's good at everything else, except making weddings happen, I guess, but he's generally good at everything. So that was a blast. Similarly, sometimes it's shorts because there's less pressure on shorts. I love doing Crypt of Shadows with Paul Azaceta. He was like someone I wanted to work with since I was a kid. I point out as well, my late friend Tom Lyle and I got to work together on one of the DC Giants. And similarly, like, just a pure joy, as you said. He's no longer with us, but just one of the best guys in the business. And I will always remember him because when I was 14 and just into trying to break into comics, he had the faith in me to do a pitch for DC for Nightmaster, which did not go through, by the way. But I will always remember that he, like a working professional, the guy that co-designed the Scarlet Spider, was doing a pitch with me, 14-year-old asshole from upstate New York. So to then bring it around where I was in and say, listen, I'll do this, but I really want to work with Tom, was really, really pleasing.
So as someone who was a ambidextrous kid, that's a nice little nugget to learn, but it may be too slow. So they're like, pick a hand. So it followed me through life. So it's weird. Like, I'm right-handed for writing, but in track, I did field events. So long jump, left foot, triple jump, right foot. But my coaches were like, what happened? And I'm like, I was an ambidextrous kid, and I think it just spread to different limbs when they made me decide. But that goes to my next question. Was there ever anything, whether it's Marvel, DC, whatever, where you tried to do something, they were just like, absolutely not?
Oh, sure. I mean, all the time. All the time. But what can I talk about them? And that's not a problem, by the way, because like to be frank, we don't own those characters without being unromantic. Like what? Sometimes I see my peers talking about like, oh, my Batman run. Well, it's actually without being it's actually the Batman run you sold to DC, so it's not your Batman. So there are rules, is what I'm saying, and that happens. That's okay. I'll tell you what. Like I'll speak broadly, and these are the funnier ones, and also the ones I feel safe saying because I'm. Like we found out a lot on Milk Wars because it was a very adult book combined with like the biggest DC characters. So we found out, for example, that Wonder Woman couldn't be shown holding a armful of dildos. You know, that is a good example, and that's fine. You know, we found out we again, that is a reasonable thing, and it would have made sense in context, but what Cecil, the writer of that book, found worked even better. So that's my joke answer. There are a lot of things like that. Oh, and there's also a joke about Batman not being able to sit down. That's kind of a joke and not a joke. There was a period of time that is now over where it was thought that he didn't look cool sitting down. So you'll find like decades of books where he's never seen doing that. But those are all, that's inside baseball enough without me setting myself on fire. And they're both somewhat amusing. So there you go.
Okay, I was gonna ask, is there anything like you're like, I can't believe we got away with that, but we're just gonna throw that one out. Alley oop to Joe.
Oh, get away? That's easier because I went to print. That means it's okay.
Okay.
But I mean, to be honest, like that shit happens all the time. It's usually again sarcasm things. Like I tried to get like, this is innocuous, but I tried to get Darcy to call Polaris Dr. Polaris as a little inside joke because she has a PhD. But they were like, no. But then I'm shocked sometimes at what we can get away with, especially with Darcy. Like we couldn't have her say asshole, but we could have her call Loki's cousin a gold-plated hole of an ass, and a shiny whining enema. So sometimes the fact that I myself am somewhat verbose and obtuse ends up winning because they're not they're colorful phrases that aren't technically as vulgar as the basic ones. So yeah, I mean, there's stuff like that. We did get like we had an iguana birth canal in Martian Manhunter, which I was really surprised that we. But you should know that Riley likes to love to be challenged. So I was like, yeah, we're gonna tell the scene from inside iguana's birth canal, and he crushed it. So I didn't think that was going to get through. I mean, the entirety of Milk Wars, to be honest. And I'm sure there's more. Again, it really depends. It really depends on the character. I'm regularly shocked at the type of jabs we can get out of Darcy, and Scarlet Witch. And it's usually the ones that are relatively innocuous that amuse me more than the more vulgar ones. Like I think gold-plated hole of an ass is funny, but I weirdly think it's funnier that there's never a problem with her referring to characters as Disney characters. Like she calls Hexfinder Maleficent. She calls another character coming up Elphaba. She calls Polaris She-Hulk, which I was sure someone was going to say, well, she's not She-Hulk. This will be confusing, but it's obvious that she's not She-Hulk. So thank you. These are the things that, for whatever reason, she calls Arcus ass kiss. Like these are the things that, again, please me, but I'm an idiot. So
you do use Darcy quite a bit. I don't know if this is even like a thing, but do you guys even like get to talk to Kat Dennings or ask her anything, or
no.
One of those things where like they got to get permission from her to use her.
No, because technically technically they're different characters. Now, if we were using a direct license, you might need permission, for example, or not. Pardon me, likeness. Sorry, it's late in the day for me here in New England. If we were doing like a likeness, maybe, but no. I mean, we're doing a version of the character, much like how they introduced Phil Coulson years ago. The thing with Darcy, it was convenient because we had created a new character and it was already basically writing Darcy, so it was like kismet. My sense of humor, I mean, Darcy is just me, to be frank. Like that's how I talk, and I myself am a jackass. So it's not that hard to write her, and we realized that we were basically already writing a Kat Dennings voiced character with this. I think her name was Ventura at one point, and then we were like, well, we have her appearing in WandaVision. We haven't debuted Darcy. in the Marvel universe. So if we make this Darcy, we get an extra boost, and it all just sort of made sense. As I said, you want to get as much eyes and attention on a book as possible. So that was sort of like happy accident, to use a Bob Rossism. But she's been a blast. I mean, like, for a character as wildly powerful as Wanda, who can walk in these cosmic and liminal spaces, it is a gift to have Darcy on board to sort of have our point of view and sometimes say this shit is fucking weird, which is often beneficial.
Which I also have to thank you, because you brought in my favorite, one of my favorite mutant ladies of X. You brought Polaris over into this book.
I thought you were going to say Mantor the Magician. I thought you were his one fan.
I mean, I don't want to let people know I'm my fan of Mantor, but no, thank you for bringing Lorna in. I love her to death.
Well, she's coming back, as you might have seen. She's in the second issue, so she'll be around for a little while.
That was something else I was going to ask, because editorial, because you're using Lorna, and yet Lorna's going to be over in another book. Do you have to check with the X camp on what the character's doing when you use them? Or is it just kind of free reign to use characters, and then they get someone to sort out continuity wise later?
Well, the answer is somewhere in between, because, yes, usually editorial, because they're all on a Slack together, versus us who are off wherever. We'll ask if someone is free before they come in and things like that. At the same time, it's comics. So as long as things fit, it doesn't necessarily mean they're happening at the same time, right? So, like, yes, we can have Polaris. We don't really have to worry about the specifics of what's going on in a parallel book, because for all you know, that happened the day after our story ended, or the day before. All of Resurrection of Magneto happens in between the ending and the X weeks later scene of Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. So, but the unsaid thing though is, like, obviously, if you're getting this toy, don't fucking break it. Like, if we're gonna have Polaris in the book, she can't suddenly change her costume and give up this life of crime and open an ice cream shop. Unless, of course, that is back to what it was before by the end of the issue. So, yeah, you make sure someone's free, and then you use the character. And it's unlikely you would see another creator making like a major change to a character that they're not the lead on. But if it makes sense for them to show up, it is all one universe,
I know we're getting close to time, so just before we get out of here, what future projects should people look out for, and like, where can they find you?
Well, I am on Twitter, and what is the other one? Instagram. I'm at the Steve Orlando. Very easy to find there. As far as new projects, man, what's been announced? Well, if you were at Comic-Con last weekend, you saw the Wrestlers of AEW opening Origin comics. I actually wrote those. So those are probably extremely rare on eBay right now. But what else is next? I'm doing Ewoks starting this fall. There's Conquest 2099, which we spoke about. You'll see me on, I guess I can't say which ones, but I'll be picking up 2 different Unlimited series, which are the digital first things Marvel does on Marvel Unlimited. And I'll be honest, like, as a creator, it's really fun doing those, because it's just a different type of work. It's basically like writing a comic strip versus a comic book, because it's all vertical and all the panels are the same dimensions. But it's also, for someone who loves the business, quote unquote, and the history of the business, doing essentially the modern version of a newspaper strip is actually really, really fun to me. So I'll be on there. There's Avengers Assemble, which starts out very soon. I just put the first book to print right now, and that is like, honestly, we got every Avenger, almost every big name Avenger that is not on Jed's team is in our team. So it's a dream come true, especially for the West Coast Avengers guy. Especially because Wonder Man is there, and I for whatever reason, I fucking love Wonder Man. And so is Lightning. There's just a lot of West Coast Avengers classics there. So it's a really fun team. Hercules has been a surprise. Talk about a joy. Hercules has been a surprise joy for that book. So that's coming out soon. What else is going on? I'm doing a bunch of Gotcha Man content at Mad Cave. Doing the Galactor book. I'm doing some one-shots with the other characters as well, which you'll see from me. You'll see from Tommy Lee Edwards. I have there's probably even more. Like as you said, I work like a bastard because I have to pay off this house and eventually give up this life of crime. But at the same time, like you never know when these things come out. So I'm kind of like, what is actually been announced and that I'm not accidentally spoiling. But so there is more. There's even more than I said. Oh, and they just announced that I think this 5th issue of Scarlet Witch has a Daredevil guest spot for Halloween, which I'm very excited about because we found out they've almost never met in the past 60 years. So it's been really. I'm really excited about that issue. Lorenzo Tomato's drawing it. It's gorgeous. There's a soft WWE reference because I myself am big into wrestling. And it's just a nice haunted subway train story for October 2024. So I'll be very excited for that to come out.
I think the only thing I really want to ask outside of this, and it's spoilers, is Ileana going to walk through the door anytime soon?
I did just say I like to be honest with you, and anytime soon, probably not. I would like to bring them together because I had a lot of fun writing her in the X-Men issue of Curse of the Man Thing, and then I wrote her again in X-Men Green. So if the book continues past where we're approved, I would love to bring them together. We got to see where things settle with the X-Men office. But I could shine you on that, but that would be bullshit. She's not in the immediate plans, but my past tenure shows that I love the character. So if we can get her in, I absolutely will.
Any chance you'll be heading up X-Men 2099, a new X-Men 2099, since we're really pushing X-Men and really pushing 2099. I just figured you'd be the guy to be heralding the 2099.
Listen, X-Men 2099. So it is not yet in the plans. We know what's going to be coming in the spring as well. But listen, X-Men 2099 is like one of my few remaining dream books. The one shot I did with it as part of Exodus is my favorite issue of that entire series. So, but you will. So I would love to is the answer, and hopefully it'll happen. But you will see. Since they're on the cover again, if I'm making news, whatever, but I have to get my guys in because I do love the X-Men 2099. So you will see them represented in Conquest by Cyclops and Phoenix 2099.
Ooh.
Hard for me not to do the Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix 2099 in space. So,
Tafari, do we have anything else?
I think I'm good.
Mr. Lamb, do you have anything else for us?
Oh, I mean, a lot. But clearly I can run my mouth. But no, I appreciate you guys having me on. I'm always happy to talk. I'm glad I could run into y'all in Nashville. The real tragedy is that I didn't have barbecue when I was in town. This is not, I know. I did have some amusing Italian food, I say, as a half Italian.
They didn't take it to Maggiano's or something like that, did they?
No, but I don't remember where it was, but it was far too like hipster to be a place called Maggiano's.
Okay, so you were probably over in like East Nashville or something like that, because that's the real hipster area and whatnot.
But no, I'm happy to be on, and like I've been saying, like for folks who are a lot of these questions sort of centered around industry type stuff. If you want a book to continue, we have to support it. I saw Tafari's hand go up when I mentioned don't steal it. Like it's very hard for us to see folks online proudly talking about pirating the work and things like that. If this isn't necessarily just about us, it's about the creator. So if you love a character, support it. It would be a lie to say the periodical sales don't matter a little more now, but I would also never say anything other than read the way that is most convenient and most exciting for you. So what's important is that you do read and you support the stuff. So, and that just doesn't go for me. It goes for everything, all my peers and all those things. So I appreciate you having me on and letting me run my mouth. Clearly it could go on. If thank God you guys didn't take the wrestling bait because we'd be here for another hour.
Oh no, we're not allowed to take the wrestling bait, even though I am a huge wrestling fan. Will would hurt me if he was not here for the wrestling stuff, because he's a huge wrestling fan. I'm actually friends with one of the NWA referees.
Oh, right on. Well, I will simply ask this: what are you most excited for this weekend at SummerSlam?
I don't want to be the guy that says the main event. Probably the Gunther match.
I mean, it's okay to be most excited for the main event. That's why it's there.
I know, but it's just so cliche to say Cody Rhodes versus Solo Sikoa. But I mean, really, I do want to see Gunther take the title. I mean, God, what's his name? Damian Priest is actually a really good champion, and despite being from a heel faction, he's that in between now, where he's like a clean heel.
Yeah, and let me tell you, I mean, he's probably. I would guess that Gunther's going to take the title, and I'll tell you what, though, he's going to put Priest through such a ringer that he's going to come out a mega face on the other end.
Oh God, yes.
But no, I'm really excited for Gunther. I got to be honest, like not to be a wrestling hipster, but I saw him back when he was Walter, and about 150 pounds heavier, and he was awesome then. He's awesome now. So it's been really pleasing for me to see him climb up there. Yeah, I mean, I'm also excited for the main. I'm mostly just excited for whatever wild ass shit Jacob Fatu is definitely going to do, even though he's not in the match.
Oh yeah. I had Hurricane Helm steal a Green Lantern ring from me. I was wearing a 3D printed one that was really, really cool. And he's like, we were watching like one of those local matches for like so-and-so whatever it was called at the time. It wasn't TNA. It was just one of those local ones they'll put together and get some good names.
Sure.
And he saw the Green Lantern ring. It's like, hey, can I hold it? It's like, yeah, he was expecting it. And then it's like, oh, I got to go on the bus. Like, I want to stop him, but at the same time, I know I shouldn't.
Man, he got you.
Well, he's a huge Green Lantern nerd. So it's like one Lantern nerd to another. So I'm a huge Kyle Rayner nerd.
Oh, well, that's why you got excited about me mentioning Ron Mars.
Yes. What else? So next time you're in Nashville, I know to bring you barbecue.
Yes, absolutely. And I hopefully will be back. If not next year, the year after. I try not to like repeat so that I don't dilute myself, but I would love to come back. I had a great time down there.
Yes, I will bring you decent barbecue.
I mean, fuck that. I want to go to Party Foul and get that fucking Bloody Mary that has 2 whole fried chickens.
I don't know if Party Foul will be here when you get back because they're actually going out of business.
Well, that's what happened. Didn't someone find a body in the bathroom years ago? Like that tends to,
you know.
What is happening up here?
Fried
chicken, and we just went from fried chicken to body in the bathroom. If you ever go to Milwaukee or Wisconsin, though, Sobelman's has a $60 fried chicken Bloody Mary you can get. So there's your backup.
$60. The other one's like 30. Does it come with a hand job? Like Jesus.
I just went there for college. I didn't stay. I don't ask.
All right. But anyway, look, it is like I said, it's a pleasure coming on. And once I do some more hustling, I would happily come back and talk to y'all again. So thank you.
Absolutely, would love to have you back as many times as you'd let us interview you.
Right on.
All right, guys, everybody, thank you so much. We will see you. Well, me and Tafari will see you tomorrow because we still
also
got
support your local comic book shops.
Oh
people.
God, yes, no, please. If you are in Nashville, go support Rick's Comic City. I go there. I spend more money than that can be announced in this podcast every 2 weeks. But they do not have a Green Lantern section because of me in trade. Legitimately, I have from the time Kyle has the ring until current in trade. And I've gotten it from them every single time. I have.
Nice.
I have so much. If I can like rotate the camera after we come offline. But guys, we'll see you soon. We'll see you tomorrow. We'll get some of this on the show, and then we'll run the full cast next week. So you're hearing this now as I'm saying that. That makes no sense. We'll just see you soon. Bye, guys.
Okay, I guess it's just me. So that was our interview with Steve Orlando while Joe is coming back to the fray. Cool guy.
I don't know why my camera is like, by the way, we're not working right now.
Yeah, he's got to come back when Will's here so we can do the wrestling talk.
God, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have enough to contribute to that, and I didn't want to waste the conversation. So I'm like, you know what? It's definitely going to be the Spartan chat.
We also need to ask more about him. I think we just only talked comics with him. We barely asked anything about the man himself.
But that's kind of why I asked, like, any inspirations or stories you got? Just you talk about like breaking each other's balls in the writing room. Like, I was trying to get like some stories out of him that were more personable, not so much about the books.
Yeah, I kind of pigeonholed. That's on me. I pigeonholed. Normally, guys, we'd have comics. We don't have anything this week, but please go support your local comic store. For me, it's Rick's Comic City. They're over in Donaldson and in Clarksville. If you can't go support them, by all means, please go support your local library. They got everything under the sun, including the banned books, which, if people are banning books, there's stuff in there you want to read. Because there's nothing more tempting than the forbidden fruit of not being able to look at it. But the libraries want you to see it. They want you to see it. In fact, most libraries actually have a banned book section now. So there's that.
I've heard some of them do actually have that. And I think my one in Orange County actually has a band section.
Also, some comic stores has a banned comic book section, but not the adult stuff, like actual like Mouse and stuff like that, like the really important books.
Good for them.
We'll be back next week. Probably a more standard show. Maybe if not, it'll just be Tafari and I. Again, I've already put something on the docket. Apparently, they're doing an isekai story with Power Rangers.
After Go-Go Loser Ranger and Suicide Squad, I could see it. And the fact that they're just calling it isekai, they're not even naming it's just insert IP isekai title.
Yeah, the Red Rangers: An Adventure in Another World, I think is the title.
Okay, so we got that. I need to sift through D23 and see what information is actually accurate.
Oh, right, that is happening right now, isn't it?
If you just go to YouTube right now, the thumbnails are so goddamn ridiculous. Like, clearly none of this is real, and a lot of you just want clicks. But God, bring back the dislike button.
What's another one you need to watch if you're trying to get into the Sentai stuff? Love After World Domination, where the Red Ranger falls in love with the main henchman of the evil organization. Watch that one.
There's another one that just came out, but the title's a mouthful. It's on like the front page. It's like that time the person got something and leveled up to the maximum and became the strongest. Like, I'm not. It is like a long mouthful, ridiculous title on the front page of Crunchyroll.
No, if I deal with these guys, it's going to be like Sentai themed. Because there's that one, the one I just named. There was another one that was like super weird. Oh well, it'll come to me at some point. But guys, we're gonna call it a night. We'll see you guys soon. You guys take it easy, and we'll be back next week, with or without Will. We're still not sure. Where can we find you before we go away?
Oh yeah, I'm here under all platforms. I also do editing for Blurred's Eye View. I am currently in the middle of editing a lot of interviews we've had over the last couple months. We just dropped the one with Najee Jeter, who plays Miles Morales in the Spider-Man video game. So if you want to know about his time on the set of Grown Ups with Adam Sandler and Chris Rock, what it was like playing Sam in the original Last of Us video game and watching that IP explode, or becoming Miles Morales, the choice behind his haircut. Will he or will he not appear in a Spider-Verse movie? These things we talk about for about a solid 30 minutes. We also had Chase Conley, who's going to be next week. He did a lot of the background work on X-Men 97. We talked about episode 5, the Emmy nomination. Then we have Cleo Thomas. We have Atan Bukani from BlurredCon. Phil Lamar, who's at BlurredCon. And then a bunch of other stuff coming. A lot of really cool info drops coming. So, and then I kind of recorded our first semi-vlog adventure because a couple of our friends have a fan film called Vigilante that has been touring around the country. And I've actually been cataloging the 3 times we've seen it around the country. So that's going up on Monday. A lot of interesting stuff. I will get back to posting skits eventually.
When were you going to interview LeVar Burton in his endless rage?
Look, if we ever get a hold of LeVar, him and Yvette Nicole Brown, Yvette Nicole Brown, and Keith David, they just keep ducking me, man. I can't. Keith David is one of those ones that's like he gets on long enough to post and then leave before the first interaction shows up. You'll get like a like or a retweet, and after that, Unk is just off the grid.
I thought he only answered to Keith Mother effing David nowadays.
Well, apparently he kept denying being spawned for Call of Duty, and was like getting like visibly annoyed with people being like, "Oh, you signed an NDA." He's like, "I'm not." He's like, "Young man, I didn't sign an NDA. I'm not doing the voice." And then surprise, you know what it was? I was like, "Y'all leave Uncle alone." Clearly, he said he's not doing it like 50 different times. So then he retweets it, and then here comes the announcement: Keith David is back at Spawn. So I tweeted, I was like, "Damn it, Uncle, you gotta be out here yelling at these people on your behalf." And he just tweeted me like 50 laughing emojis. And that is my interaction with Keith David.
Now I just need to interact with LeVar Burton now that we found out that LeVar Burton is filled with endless rage.
Yes, that's we can have I will see if I can interview the real LeVar Burton.
I want everybody to come back alive. Maybe just get the half real LeVar Burton.
Maybe.
Just to ask him about the chains above the mantle. I've already heard that one.
Yeah, that was a wild reveal.
Yeah, just a bit. I don't know if he was serious about that or not, though.
I feel like he was dead serious. I feel like that wasn't reading Rainbow. That was just birth certificate, government name, LeVar Burton talking that day.
Good God. Ask about multimodal phasing arrays and see how far the conversation gets.
But we're also on your Twitch page right now, so let the people know where they can find you or when.
Yeah, so you can find us normally on Joe. You can find me normally on Joe and Tafari last name whenever I get the downtime to stream. It's not often, but it does happen. Show a Guy Joe over on YouTube. That's where you can find me and Tafari doing Ultraman stuff and me doing some Tokusatsu stuff. I got to upload episodes 3, 4, and 5 here soon. I'll do that tomorrow. Total Justice Gaming, kind of defunct right now, kind of inactive, but every so often a video will pop up. Just depends on if I want to move anything over from the Twitch over to the YouTube, but stuff happens. Mostly it's just me right now playing Monster Hunter endlessly. Other than that, no, we'll see you guys next week with the docket, probably some D23 news. If we can sort between what's actually there and what's not clickbait or what's not, yo, bro, I heard it off X.
That's the entire YouTube trending tab right now, so good luck.
And I hate it. We'd have an easier time covering HoloLive. All right, guys. We'll see you soon. Later.
Later. And cut.
But with my computer, are you serious? No.